Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pandemic Cooking. I'll be your guest chef today, and as you can see, you're in my wonderful home. For any of you who've seen any of my other videos for my house, you'll notice that it's all nice and designed and beautiful and like dark and moody and kind of cool. The kitchen has not been touched yet, so don't judge me. Okay, let's get right into it. Today we're learning how to make Italian meatballs, okay? So I'm just going to go over the ingredients really quick. I'm going to go over how to mix them, why I use the ingredients I do, why I don't use some ingredients you might recognize or you might be used to using in meatballs, and then I'm going to show you how to make them into a delicious rosé sauce. Okay, so let's get started. What I have here is I have equal parts of ground beef and ground pork. And the reason that I use a mixture of ground beef and ground pork is that the pork has a higher fat content and it adds a lot of flavor. Fat is where the flavor lives when you're cooking with anything. And the fat content of the pork just goes really well with everything, makes everything taste good, but you really want that beef flavor as well. Now, you can do this if you want to keep it halal. You can do this obviously without ground pork at all, and you can just get some halal ground beef and it'll work just fine. It might be a little bit dry, but it'll be just fine. And if you want to make it lean, so if you want to really reduce the fat content, you can substitute the ground beef or the ground pork for turkey or ground chicken, but if you do that, you might have to add some eggs and breadcrumbs in order to keep it bound together. That being said, let's go over the rest of the ingredients. We have cayenne pepper, we have onion powder, we have salt, we have garlic powder, we have my favorite Italian seasoning that I use for a lot of Italian cooking when I just want a good general flavor and I'm not going for specifically more basil or oregano or anything like that. I've got freshly cracked ground pepper, and I've got some Parmesan cheese-like product here. Now, this cheese is one of the keys to this recipe, okay? This is one of the ways that this recipe turns out to be amazing, is you've got to have some sort of cheese product in there. I recommend a grated cheese product. Traditionally, you can use something really amazing like Pecorino Romano or Grana Padano, or if you really want to, Parmigiano Reggiano. Those are fairly expensive, and because this is a little bit of a budget conscientious time, what we're doing is we're going with good old store brand Parmesan cheese-like product, okay? So that's just to make it a little bit cheaper, but it's still adding a ton of flavor, it's adding a good amount of salt, and it's gonna help actually bind everything together. I've mentioned twice about binding things together. We're missing eggs and breadcrumbs in this recipe, which most people will put in their burgers and most people will put in their meatballs just to hold everything together. But if you don't overmix things, and if you have the right ratios of everything in here, you don't need the eggs and you don't need the breadcrumbs, okay? I do the same thing when I make burgers. I don't put eggs or breadcrumbs in them. You have to treat the meat a little bit differently, but I feel like it ends up with a much nicer product without all that filler. And also, if you want to have a low-carb meal, then obviously you can't have those breadcrumbs, so you just skip that and do it like this instead. So without further ado, all I'm going to do for the first step is I'm going to mix things together, okay? And now what I've got here is a 2-camera setup for the first time. So you might be hearing this, or I might just do a quick jump cut to the act of me actually mixing it together, which would be really exciting. And now I am using gloves here because I just don't want to have to wash my hands too many times while I'm doing this, because that just makes my hands really dry. All right, so I am using, again, equal parts ground beef and ground pork. Now this is going to make a lot of meatballs, okay? Like this is a big portion, right? I'm only going to make a few to show you, and then I'll fast forward the rest, and you can see it all as a finished product. Okay, so I've got my beef in there. Next, I'm going to be adding my flavoring. So I have my cayenne pepper. That is going to add some spice. I'm not adding quite all of it, and again, this is Italian cooking, Italianish cooking. I'm not measuring. I'm feeling it, right? I feel in my heart, I see that, and I'm like, you know what? I want a little bit more because I do like a little bit of heat in my food. Italian seasoning. Okay, boom. It's a good amount. You can smell it. It smells good. I've got my garlic, granulated garlic. Now you'll see here that I'm not using fresh garlic or even jarred garlic or jarlic as I call it. And that's because I don't want any small pieces of anything that are going to potentially disrupt the structural integrity of the meatball. So I'm not putting big pieces of onion in, I'm putting onion powder because those big pieces of onion, those are going to possibly disrupt the structural integrity of it. And they're going to make it so that when you're cooking it, if there's a big chunk of onion or even a small piece of garlic, that could be where the meatball is going to fall apart, right? And you're still getting all the flavor from these things. And I'm going to add some freshly cracked brown pepper. My pepper mill broke, so I've been cracking fresh peppercorns with a mortar and pestle, like a peasant. And I've got some Parmesan cheese. So I'm going to put my Parmesan cheese in there. And then I'm going to mix. And I'm going to skip showing you all this mixing part because I'm just going to get my hands in there at first, and then we're going to jump right ahead to where it's actually mixed. I could smell it needed a little bit more salt. Perfect. So it's all mixed together. You can see that there's no big chunks of beef or big chunks of pork, and you can see that there's no clumps of spices here. So the next step is to actually turn them into meatballs. Now I've got a little trick here that I like to use. Okay. Now, I've got a little trick here that I like to use when I'm making the meatballs. Okay, all I do is I take some of my ground meat and I put it in a container of some kind so that it all will stay the same size. I press it in, and I like this because it already starts off nice and round. Now you can use something like an ice cream scoop, or if you have one of those scoopers with thingies that you click, and it'll make great, perfect round balls. That'll be awesome. But I don't have that at home, so I've got my little meatball here. Boom. I'm pressing it right in, because that's how we know they're all the same size. And then I'm going to fast forward this next bit. Okay, so I've got all my meatballs here, and that took barely any time at all. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll my meatballs in my hands like this. Now, these are huge, right? And that's kind of by design. I'm only going to have a couple of these like per serving, right? For the two of us, I'll probably cook like 4 of these with some sauce, right? Throw them on some noodles, and you're good to go. You can make them as big or as small as you want. Remember, they are going to shrink as they cook. They're especially going to shrink a little bit, or a fair amount, because they don't have any eggs or breadcrumbs in them, right? So that's one of the things, is that they will shrink. They're not going to be quite as big, so keep that in mind, but these are like real big boys, as you can see, okay? Now I'm going to show you how to cook these, and I'm going to show you how to make a delicious rosé sauce to go with them, okay? Okay, welcome back. So what I've got for you here is I have got a pan that is smoking hot. I've got some olive oil, and I've got my meatballs ready to go. And I've also got a tomato sauce that I've already made. And if you want to know how to make the tomato sauce that I make, what I'm going to get you to do is just to go to the lasagna video. And the very first thing in the lasagna video is how to make the sauce. It takes a few minutes to watch, takes a few more minutes to make, but bing, bang, boom, you'll be ready to go. You can also just use some like a can of diced tomatoes and tomato sauce. But I prefer to make a sauce first, because then you're getting all that extra flavor. Okay, so what I've got is I've got a pan that is really hot here. I'm going to put some olive oil in there. The olive oil is partially to add flavor and partially to keep the meatballs from sticking. They shouldn't stick because they're full of fat, but you never know. And I really want to avoid that. And again, you got to be gentle with these meatballs because they are structurally, what's the word I'm looking for? They're structurally delicate, okay? And again, these are real big boys. Okay? You can make them whatever size you want. You don't want to put too many in the pan, Because what's going to happen if you put too many in the pan, you're going to crowd the pan, you're going to cool off the oil too quickly, you're going to cool off the pan too quickly. That's when stuff is going to start sticking. That's when you're not going to get that nice browning that you want that's really going to add all the flavor to the meatballs, right? You can just cook these meatballs in the microwave if you want, right? And they'd be safe to eat, and they'd be fine, and they would taste like food. But when you're cooking them in the pan with this hot oil, and you're getting that nice browning, a little bit of that dark browning on the outside that's like this short of being burnt, that's where you're really getting all that flavor from the meat, okay? It's called the Maillard effect, Maillard, something like that, Maillard effect, and that's how you get flavor out of meat. So what I'm going to do, you don't want to turn these meatballs too often, but I want to turn them, oh yeah, see that? Nice, perfect, beautiful browning on there, okay? That's gorgeous. Our goal is to get every side of these meatballs nice and browned like that, okay? That is our goal. And it starts smelling real good. Oh, yeah, that smells amazing. Okay? We're going to keep going. I'm going to fast forward this process a little bit so you're going to see them cook. And that way you'll get the full effect of it, and you'll see how it's done, and then I'll carry on. Okay, so as you can see, my meatballs are nice and brown all around the outside. You can see here, you've got that nice dark brown that's on there. That's exactly the color that you're looking for, okay? If you do it less than that, you're really not going to end up with that excellent flavor. That's one of the keys to doing this. Now, you can, as I've had people point out, you can actually do this all in the oven. So you can make, especially if you're doing mini meatballs, it works really well. Scoop out a bunch of small meatballs, put them on a baking sheet with some parchment paper. You can drizzle a little olive oil if you want. You don't have to. Throw them in the oven, really hot heat until they're nice and brown on the outside. I like to do this because it just gets a little bit more browning than an oven is going to. Okay, now, obviously these meatballs are not fully cooked all the way through. They won't have time for that. And if you cook them all the way through like this, you run the risk of burning on the outside, and we really don't want to do that. So that's why our next step is to take our tomato sauce that we already have, okay, and we're going to pour it right in there, right on top of everything. Whoop. Big splash. And it's going to start smelling incredible. Just beautiful. So this now becomes a combination cooking method because we have a dry heat with the oil, and now we have a wet heat with the tomato sauce. This is called braising. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a lid right on top of here. Just like this, on there. And you turn the heat down to about a medium low, depends on your stove. And we're just going to let that steam. We're going to push all that heat right into the center of those meatballs so that they can fully cook. You really want to cook these 100% in order to be safe. And then once they're fully cooked, then the sauce is ready to go. And you can eat it just like that. You can put it on spaghetti. You can put it on anything you'd like. But you can also turn it into a rosé sauce, and that's what I'm going to show you next. Okay, so my meatballs are fully cooked, right? They've been cooking for an indeterminate amount of time because I didn't time it, because I don't time anything. So what we're going to do, we're going to take these meatballs out, right? Okay. So the meatballs are coming out. I'm going to leave the heat on in the pan, okay? I'm also going to make a huge mess with the sauce, but that's fine. We're all messes right now, so it kind of just works out. So I've got a beautiful set of meatballs, and I've got a beautiful tomato sauce. Now, again, you could serve this tomato sauce and the meatballs just by themselves. You could serve it on whatever you want. What I like to do, what I really like to do, is to turn this tomato sauce into a rosé sauce. And it's so simple. All we're gonna do is we're gonna take some heavy cream. You can see it here. I'm gonna stir it in. Boom, just like this. Okay, heavy cream in there. Give it a little swirl. Make sure that heat up to maximum. Okay. Then, as it's cooking, it needs a little bit of this Parmesan adjacent grated cheese product. Okay? Again, if you're real bougie, you could throw something much nicer in there. I really like Pecorino Romano or a Grana Padano. Grana Padano is probably one of my favorite Italian cheeses. I like it more than Parmigiano Reggiano. All of you Italian cooking purists can fight me on that, but I'd rather have Grana Padano than Parmigiano Reggiano. So all we're going to do, you see we have a nice, beautiful pink sauce here, orange sauce, and we're going to cook it on maximum heat, until it bubbles, thickens up a little bit, and then we can just pour it right over the meatballs and serve just like that. So you can see what I'm looking for are these little bubbles in the middle here, right? That's where it's actually starting to do the thing. On the outside, yep, that's fine, but you really need those bubbles to be cooking in the middle as well. If you want to speed up this process of it boiling faster, you can throw a lid on it and it's going to boil almost immediately. However, when you're actually cooking the sauce, you're going to have to take the lid off. As you can see, it's steaming up here. It's because it's actually trapping all that water in there. And what we need to do is we need to boil off some of that water from the cream in order for it to thicken up. Okay, otherwise it becomes a little bit of a watery sauce. So, see all that steam, we need that to actually release. And we're just going to thicken it up just a little bit. Not a crazy amount. But we definitely want it to coat the meatballs or coat the noodles that you're serving it on. And if it's too liquidy, it's just not going to do that, okay? Oh boy. She's splattery. The chef I worked with always said that you can tell a good chef from a bad chef by how clean they keep their working area. A chef that keeps their working area very clean and tidy is generally a much better chef than one who doesn't. All right, so I can see it's thickening up quite a bit, like I can just see by how it's behaving around the edges of the pan. What I'm going to do is grab a spoon. I'm going to take it, I see it coats the spoon like that. Perfect. Then this gets served however you want. On top of the meatballs, mixed in with the noodles, however you want. These meatballs have added delicious, beautiful flavor to the sauce as well, so everything is just going to come together and be really gorgeous. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more episodes from myself, from Miss Stelmaschuk, and from Miss N. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.